Meaning, meaning, meaning. What do you mean by that? M-E-A-N. What do you mean by the meaning of meaning? Mean like angry mean or bad, or mean like sense or the right interpretation? That's what I want to talk about, is meaning. When you ask, what do you mean by that? You can actually mean several different things. So for example, you can know what all of the words that I am saying mean in terms of their dictionary definitions. You can read the Bible or you can read a book and you can know what the definitions of all the words are or mean and still not understand what the passage means. Because sometimes when you ask the question, what do you mean, or what is meant by this, you are asking for the referent. You're asking, to what does this sentence or this passage refer to? To what, Brandon, are you referring to when you use certain words? And that is not necessarily tied to the definition. In another one of the lectures, I talk about this scenario that happened between myself and one of my supervisors at my first job in the prison. He and I started working together. He was the dean of the school on the Darrington prison unit in Texas, and I was just an assistant. And he and I were sitting in the library one day, and we were talking about how we were going to develop the program. And I kept saying that we can now do all of these cool things. We can do a conference on the weekends and bring in free world professors and scholars to the prison to talk about topics like we would do at a free world academic conference. I said, we could do like marriage conferences, bring the guys in and their free world wives to come in and like have a day celebrating their marriage. We can have like a barbecue for the officers to show appreciation for them. We can do all this stuff. And every time I was saying something like that, he kept saying, no, we can't do that. No, we can't do that. No, we can't do that. And I was getting really irritated. And then I realized in the middle of the conversation that he and I were using the word we differently, or at least I meant something by the use of we, and he did not understand it. He didn't understand to whom was I referring with the word we. So he understood what I was saying. We can do barbecues, we can do conferences, we can do all these different things. He understood the meanings of the words, like their dictionary definitions, but he didn't understand who was being referred to when I used the word we. What I meant was we, whoever thinks that this is a good idea, whoever wants to be a volunteer in the prison, we can do all of these things now. But what he understood was every time I used the word we, I meant me, him, and the school. And for him, he was coming in as a dean, as an employee of the school. He had a budget, and the budget was only to go towards the educational aspect of the college. So buying textbooks and paying the salaries of instructors and staff. So when I was talking about we can do all these other things, he kept thinking in his mind, no, because we as the school, that's outside of our budget. But I kept thinking we is just whoever is down with it. And that's because I had been involved in the prisons before I worked there. I was a volunteer and I was with different organizations before I came to work for the school. So I'm sitting here thinking this is awesome. We now have an inside on the prison. We're not merely volunteers. We work here every day. We can do all of these things. But the referent is the problem. What did I mean when I said we? Who was I referring to when I said we? So sometimes we can mean something that has to do with the referent. When you're talking about meaning as referent, you're talking about to who or what is the object being discussed. When you're talking about meaning as referent, you want to know what is being spoken about. What do you mean by we? In other words, who is the referent of we? The referent that I was talking about was me and whoever thinks it's a great idea. The referent for my supervisor was us as a school, and that's not what I meant. There's a passage in the Bible in the book of Acts. It's Acts chapter 8, verse 34. In this passage, there is someone called the Ethiopian servant, and then there's Philip, an apostle. And the servant had a question for the apostle about another book in the Bible, Isaiah. He's asking about Isaiah chapter 53. And in Isaiah 53, it's talking about a suffering servant. There's a servant being described who's going to suffer. And the Ethiopian asks Philip, to whom is this being spoken about? Or in other words, he's saying, tell me please, who is the prophet Isaiah, talking about? Is he talking about himself? Is he the suffering servant? Or is it someone else? Is he talking about someone else? So in this passage, the Ethiopian is asking Philip for clarification on who is being spoken about. He's trying to understand what the passage means. He can still understand all the definitions of the word, but he doesn't understand who the suffering servant is. And he says, is the prophet Isaiah saying that he is the suffering servant, or is he talking about someone else? And that's a key passage in the Bible, because as it turns out, Philip says, well, the suffering servant he's talking about was Christ, Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the Son of Man. It wasn't Isaiah himself. And that becomes a key passage in the gospel and the evangelistic efforts of Philip. So the referent is sometimes what we mean by meaning.